not to be missed is any edition of Clare History in Focus, where the man at the helm is Colm Liddy, the local historian and author, and he joins me now. Colm, how are you?
Good morning, Alan.
We are returning to something that I think you opened not just my own eyes but a lot of the listeners' eyes and indeed ears, given the medium we were broadcasting in. When one of the recent episodes, the Terry Alt fair, and I'd never heard of this at all, but once you told us about it, it sounded fascinating. Before we get into the Terry Alts Part 2, this time it's murder. I just felt the title, it lent that I had to say that rather ominously. Can you just remind people where we were at at the end of Part 1 and what had happened?
Okay, so it's 1831. The population of Ireland is exploding, and the place it's exploding most is in County Clare. So obviously poverty is increasing, and in this particular winter there had been a very bad harvest, so the price of potatoes began to go up, and that is, for so many people, that's all they live on. And the difference between it being 2 pence per stone and it being 4 pence per stone is truly massive. So that's the context. They're getting angry, they're beginning to starve. And secondly, as they say in rebellions, it's not when times are very bad that you have rebellions, it's when they're very bad plus you had expectations and hope, that deadly quantity. And Daniel O'Connell, this is just a few years after his election.
He'd given so many people hope who had felt hopeless before.
That's right. They had possibly thought that we could get this guy elected, well, magically our situation would be transformed. In fact, the political route, you could say, took, maybe 50 years before we really had enough people in the House of Commons to begin to affect change. That was the Parnell era. But meanwhile, back in this time, no, Daniel O'Connell was not able to work miracles on his own. So people are beginning to get cheesed off. And County Clare, kind of exclusive really, a tiny bit in Galway, tiny bit in Limerick and Tip. But basically County Clare had our own private rebellion for 6 months, which really kept the authorities busy. In the last episode, we focused on the non-violent part of it, which was kind of nice. They dug up fields, massive quantities.
That was the main takeaway, wasn't it? This was a way of kind of getting up the nose of the establishment and the authorities, digging massive holes to ruin thehave chances of growing crops.
No, the opposite, to make them have crops. What we did not want was pasture for cattle, because you have 100 acres and you just have maybe 100 cows roaming freely. Nobody is employed. If you have 100 acres and you have to sow corn, basically you're going to need 30 men basically to make that happen. So that's why we needed the employment, and we needed to sow things, because it's much more efficient to actually feed people than cattle. Okay,
as you said, Part 1, very much the pacifist, non-violent approach. Given the title, I've given away Part 2. They take a rather different, more serious approach. So there was, and I guess given that the digging up holes non-violent approach had only gotten them so far, Colm, they went down a different road, and there were violent crimes, indeed a spree of violent crimes.
Yeah, so I mean the non-violent thing involves tens of thousands of normal Clare people being involved, in the digging. But then there's a hardcore of, I suppose, a dozen here and a dozen there at various parts of the counties who are the more wild boys. You could say these are the very people who in time would evolve into the Fenians, and in time evolve into the IRA. It's a bunch of lads in their early 20s who have a camaraderie and then do things at night, basically. So what are the things they did? Well, the sad thing about Ireland is that when war breaks out, it's often our own who are the victims, So one person is a guy called Maloney in Cratloe. He refused to abandon his master's cattle, so he was shot dead. A servant of Bindon Scott in Carracon. Patrick Donlan, who was a servant in Dysart, he was shot. Daniel Hastings was a farm steward in Rallahine. He was shot. And 2 more Stewarts and Quinn. So you even get from the surnames, these are just ordinary Irish Catholic people on the wrong side. Maybe less deserving of our sympathy was a Patrick Gleeson. He was found in a haystack in Clonlohan, and he was with 7 bullets in him, but he was suspected of having spied for the authorities. There was always people like that.
All right, hard to find a needle in a haystack, easier to find a Gleeson in a haystack, particularly if he's got 7 bullet holes in him.
And finally, possibly the most horrifying of these ones I'll just run through was there was Doyle brothers down near Kilrush. They also were suspected of having snitched to the authorities. For that, they were, dragged out of their beds at night and their tongues were cut off.
Ugh. And I guess so, to be seen as whatever phrase you want to use, a grass or a collaborator with the enemy, just about the most serious crime you could commit, I guess, short of murder, that would earn this kind of retribution.
Yes, because I mean, all Irish rebellions, right from the beginning, from whatever.
We scupper ourselves, don't we?
We always have these people, who go to the other side. And as time went on, people got more and more impatient with this crap going on. And yes, the punishments could be quite brutal, I'm afraid.
Okay. Any other murders that were gory or hairy that we need to know about?
Today we're just going to really focus on two of them. And the first one happened just outside. If you take the road out of Lisdoonvarna North, go up along there on an Easter Monday, there had been a party of Terrials going around the countryside doing their various things, and the constabulary were sent out from Doolin Barracks to go and apprehend them. And particularly they captured a guy called John Cahill, and then they had him, and then he escaped. He got into the church, which is on the main road there. Excuse my pronunciation, but I think it's called Tuvahera Church. Still stands on that roadway. Has a lovely little statue inside it, which is really ancient, like probably 800 years old. Well, anyway, then they dragged him out of the church. And in that time, not just other Terrys, but a vast mob had now, from all the neighbourhood, had assembled and were outraged at, you just don't take a person from a church. That's outside the rules, as you know. So they're very angry. And they begin to shout and throw stones at the constabulary as they're a long way from home now to get back to Doolin Barracks. And they begin to walk. And as they do, the mob are at both sides of them and out over the hedges, getting more and more. So the constabulary start to shoot at them with their muskets.
Understandable, but I don't think that's going to produce the desired reaction you're hoping for.
No, the mob gets angrier and angrier. They're throwing things at them, and it's getting more. You could, in fairness, it was no handy place to be a constable at that time. You're moving very slowly. You're bringing your man, and the crowd are screaming blue murder at them and throwing things, and they say keep pausing to start shooting at them, and they keep going until finally they've run out of bullets. And this becomes quite apparent to the mob. And the mob descended on them and essentially just killed them with their bare hands. And indeed, I suppose, whatever implements they had in their hands. It was just a frenzy of violence. It just killed them all. One of them did try to escape, and he ran across country towards the coast. But they got him as well. And afterwards, you can read the autopsies online. It's quite disturbing. Their remains were barely together. They were mangled.
They were torn asunder, basically.
They were torn asunder. Their skulls were flattened. There was very little.
Flattened?
Yes. It was, as I say, an astonishing. The doctor in charge of the autopsy could hardly know what to make of them. And all their clothes were gone. Of course, their weaponry, their money. But in the aftermath, they were named, and their names were Alexander Shaw, Daniel Gallagher, Thomas Duffy, Andrew Joyce, and James Netterville. 4 of them were Catholic. I mean, that was, that's the thing. They were just ordinary guys, really, in the end of the day, but now very much on the wrong side. In the aftermath, it was decided they were buried at Ennistimon in the graveyard there, and not a single spade or shovel could be found in the district to dig their grave. And obviously none of the locals would do it.
Funny that.
Ultimately, a police force had to come out from Ennis and commandeer shovels from local, and they were put in the grave, by the police. But desperate bad feeling. There was a court case, but they couldn't really find them. I mean, there was such a mob involved. Only one person was hung for it, James Grady. Naturally, there was a few informers found who could claim that he had been the ringleader, but who really knows? There were so many people involved.
I sense he was basically the sacrificial lamb.
Yeah, he was, and the rest, it is believed anyway in the Doolin area that the main ringleaders really escaped to America. They went to Galway, took a boat, never came back.
I mean, I'm not, I wouldn't be on the constabulary side in this, but God, what a way to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doesn't bear thinking about.
Yeah.
Even though I am thinking about it.
Now, let us move on to another,
very quickly.
another murder. This one has a little bit more class to it because it's kind of a...
This one has a little bit more class to it.
In that it's a mystery. It's a mystery.
Okay, very good.
This is more of an Agatha Christie now. We're moving to the nicer end of it. Yeah. So now we have a man. The name is William Blood. William Blood is a major landowner of... His pile is called Applevale.
Sorry, we're going to talk about a murder and the guy's called Blood.
Yeah, literally.
You couldn't make it.
They were a big family for a while in Clare. 200 years ago, they were a thing. So anyway, it's outside Corofin if you go in the direction of Ina, out a road there. And intriguingly, his house still stands. So you can kind of... it's on private property in fairness, but you can see that from the house exactly how it all went down. So on this day... He was, as you would be, a gentleman. He was a single gentleman in your room, smoking a pipe and having your brandy, and all was well with the world. When all of a sudden, a group of men broke into the house. They found the butler in the pantry, stuck a pistol to his neck, said...
Sounds like a Cluedo.
got all the rest of the staff and put them into a room and locked the door, and got the butler and said, "Where is your master?" And he took them down the corridor. But William Blood heard them coming. And he opened the door, saw that there was a commotion. And the house is quite elaborate. There's lots of doorways and passageways. But he sneakily went around the back to try and get out into the backyard around them. And if he did, unfortunately, there was more of them outside the back door. One of whom had a scythe.
Oh. Yeah.
And again, William Blood was attacked in a most frenzied manner, and... when they found his body in the morning, it just didn't really bear looking at because there was rocks and everything was used in...
as if the scythe wasn't enough. And
as
the
if the
scythe
scythe
would
wasn't
do
enough.
tremendous damage to... Oh, my God.
So that was grand. The staff were all tied up, and in particular, the butler was tied up very tightly with all sorts of leather straps or whatever. And none of them moved all night. They were so frightened, and it was the morning time before they let the authorities know. So the authorities arrive on the scene and it's desperate. I mean, the whole gentry of Clare is frightened because, after all, to be in Clare in particular, you're surrounded by these peasant Catholics everywhere.
Why are they so angry with us?
The thoughts that they could come while you're actually having your cigar and your brandy and attack you is deeply frightening. A gloom descended on the gentry of Clare, I'm sad to say.
Won't someone think of the gentry?
And one of them wrote, a lot of them wrote their letters to Dublin Castle as to what should be done. But William Fitzgerald said that back in 1798, they had simply rounded up all the bad characters in the entire area and given them a good flogging.
Why can't we just do that again?
Sort of things out. And that's what needed to be done. Now, meanwhile, on the scene the morning afterwards, the constables arrived, and an intriguing character among them was a man called John Morgan. And it should be said at this stage, the concept of a detective did not yet exist. I mean, there was no detective in 1831. But nonetheless, he's a clever guy. And straight off, as they go through the house, they notice that not much has been taken in terms of robbery. It's meant to have been a robbery, and yet there's very little taken. So our man, anyway, he unties the butler, Patrick Connors, and says, "What do you think happened?" And Patrick says, "I'll tell you now. I'll tell you what happened." So he took him across the yard. The yard is still there. It's an enclosed walled yard. He said, "I bet you they came over here now. I'll show you." On the other side of the wall, there was what's known as a sheep creep. It's kind of a wooden contraption in which sheep are allowed to come and go inside it. But effectively, it's a big piece of wood that, when you would lean it against a wall, would be like a ladder. So that's how they would have got in. And okay, says our John Morgan. Except, as Patrick Connors led him across the courtyard, he noticed that although it had been kind of muddy, there was no footprints. And these are all now barefoot guys. There's no footprints. And on the other side, where this ladder device apparently is, there's no mud on it. And he climbs up to the top where the wall has kind of shingles, and they haven't been in any way disturbed. Yeah. So John Morgan, and then indeed as they walk back across the courtyard, there's a £3 note on the ground. And he's pretty sure it wasn't there earlier. There is such a thing as a £3 note at this time. So all in all, he starts to think that this Patrick Connors guy is feeding him a line. And the more they delve into it, I say it does not add up that there's been very little money taken. And also what doesn't add up is that the attack took place at exactly the right time, because it was at 8:30 p.m. At 9, everything would have been much more closed up. You know, that was the rule of the household.
Colm, I don't know what you're suggesting. Are you suggesting that these perpetrators had an inside man?
I am indeed.
Who may well have been the butler.
And the butler has often been, and so it would appear. So it's fascinating reading the thing, because John Morgan, the constable, figures out a lot, as I say, from his little detections. But guess what? The state doesn't really give a damn. They put him in jail, Patrick Connors, for a while. But that kind of thing doesn't fly, because the only thing that flies in courtrooms in those days is intimidation and bribery and informers. No one's interested in your little theories about, you know, the mud on the ladder being there or not being there. So Patrick Connors is set free. And eventually the state does, as it always does in these cases, it finds a few people who are willing to tell the tale for immunity. So they get a guy and they bring him forward, you know, in the court case. And he tells the story about, that was Patrick Connors who came up with the whole idea. He invited a bunch of men to help him. They didn't even come in through that backyard. They came in a totally different way. And he let him in, and then they obviously tied him up afterwards so that he could, you know, plead innocence.
An alibi.
So Patrick Connors is hung, another man, John Cullinan, and then the search goes on because they want to get all 7 of them. And again, they where they hang them is in Corofin town now. As you go out the country, you'll notice a grotto. There's a grotto there now. But just a little bit above that, they wanted a spot where when they would hang them, they would be looking at Applevale. You know, they needed it, you know, symbolically, that's very important. And again, in the whole area, nobody can be found to build a gallows, you know, which is great work for a carpenter.
So outside help once again.
So they have to get a bunch of guys from Ennis in fancy clothes, meaning in disguise. So some yahoos from Ennis are brought out in fancy clothes, and they build the gallows. And eventually the 7 men are hung facing towards Applevale.
Poetic ending. Where do we finish off at this point?
Well, I just wanted to say as well, there was an amusing part of it when they got this informer and they put him up on the stand, who shopped everybody. He was, you know, of course asked, you know, why did you get involved in this? And he said memorably, I did not know I was going to a murder until I went.
He was just totally oblivious.
He was. So, I mean, look, it's just a sad story, I suppose. Of course, the murder was inexcusable. And also, it should be said, they got so little money. The incompetence of it all would make you cry, because they could conceivably have gotten loads of, you know, jewellery, guns and whatnot. They had hoped in their dreams to get £1,000. How much did they get? £2.
They were a little bit off.
£2 divided by 7, which I'm in the old money, I cannot do the sums, but frankly, it was a few shillings a piece was all they got, and extreme notoriety, and of course, an early death on the gallows.
Wow, when it was billed as This Time It's Murder, you were not kidding. Flattened skulls is a phrase I'm going to struggle to forget about for quite a long time. Colm, thank you. If people want to access your shop, I don't know if you have T-shirts of murders, Terry Alt murders, hopefully not, but where can they access it?
It's at shopinireland.ie.
Brilliant stuff, as ever, Colm Liddy. Thank you very much, the local historian and author with us.